tonight, Olivia?
I suppose so. Are you?
Yes. Horribly tedious parties they give, don't they?
Oh, horribly tedious. Never know where I go. Never know why I go anywhere.
I come to be educated.
I hate being educated.
Why? Well, it puts one almost on a level with the commercial classes. But dear Gertrude Chilton is always telling me I should find some serious purpose in life, so I come here to try and find one.
I don't see anybody here tonight who one could possibly call a serious purpose. The man who took me into dinner talked to me about his wife the whole of the time.
Very trivial of him.
Terribly trivial. What did your man talk about?
About myself.
And were you interested?
Oh, no, not in the smallest degree.
Oh, what martyrs we are, dear Mark.
And how well it becomes us, dear Olivia.
Mr. and Lady Jane Barford. Lord Caversham.
Good evening, Lady Chilton. Very good for nothing young son being here.
I don't think Lord Goring has arrived yet.
Why do you call Lord Goring good for nothing?
Does he lead such an idle life?
How such a thing? Why, he rides in the Row at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes to the opera 3 times a week, changes his clothes at least 5 times a day, and rides out every night with Caesar, you know.
But that's not a very charming young lady.
How should you say that, Lord Caversham? Do come to us more often. You know, we're always at home on Wednesdays, and you look so well with your star.
I'll never go anywhere now. Sick of London society. Shouldn't mind being introduced to my own tailor. He always votes on the right side, but objects strongly to being sent down to dinner with my wife's milliner. Never could stand Lady Caversham's bonnets.
Oh, I love London society. I think it's immensely improved. It is entirely composed now of beautiful idiots and brilliant lunatics, just what society should be.
And which is Goring, beautiful idiot, or the other thing?
I have been obliged for the present to put Lord Goring into a class quite by himself, but he is developing charmingly.
Into what?
I hope to let you know very soon, Lord Caversham.
Lady Markby. Mrs. Keeverley.
Dear Gertrude, so kind of you to let me bring my friend, Mrs. Cheesley. 2 such charming women should know each other.
I think Mrs. Cheesley and I have met before. I did not know she had married a 2nd time.
Oh, nowadays people marry as often as they can, don't they? It's most fashionable. Dear Duchess, how is the Duke? Brain still weak, I suppose.
Have we really met before, Lady Chilton? I can't remember where. I have been out of England for so long.
We were at school together, Mrs. Cheesley.
Indeed. I have forgotten all about my school days. I have a vague impression that they were detestable. I'm not surprised. Do you know, I'm quite looking forward to meeting your clever husband, Lady Chilton. Since he's been at the Foreign Office, he has been so much talked of in Vienna. They actually succeed in spelling his name right in the newspapers. That in itself is fame on the continent.
I hardly think there'll be much in common between you and my husband, Mrs. Cheesley.
Chère madame, quelle surprise! I have not seen you since Berlin.
Not since Berlin, 5 years ago.
Oh, and you are looking younger and more beautiful than ever. How do you manage it?
I make it a rule only to talk to perfectly charming people like yourself.
Oh, you flatter me, you flatter me, as they say here.
Do they really say that here? How dreadful of them.
Oh, yes, they have a wonderful language. It really should be more widely known.
Good evening, Lady Markby. I hope you brought Sir John with you.
Oh, I have brought a much more pleasant person than Sir John. Sir John's temper, since he's taken seriously to politics, has become quite unbearable. Really, now that the House of Commons is trying to become useful, it does a great deal of harm.
Oh. I hope not, Lady Markby. At any rate, we do our best to waste the public time, don't we? But who is this charming person you've been kind enough to bring to us?
Her name is Mrs. Cheesley, one of the Dorsetshire Cheesleys, I suppose, who I really don't know. Families are so mixed up nowadays. Indeed, as a rule, everyone turns out to be someone else.
Mrs. Cheesley, I seem to know the name.
Oh, she's just arrived from Vienna.
Ah, yes, I think I know whom you mean.
Oh, she goes everywhere there and has the most pleasant scandals about all her friends. I really must go to Vienna next winter. I hope there's a good chef at the embassy.
Oh, well, if there is not, the ambassador will certainly have to be recalled.
Oh, allow me to introduce you. My dear, Sir Robert Chiltern is dying to know you.
Everyone is dying to know the brilliant Mrs. Cheveley. Our attachés in Vienna write to us about nothing else.
Thank you, Sir Robert. An acquaintance that begins with a compliment is sure to develop into a real friendship. It starts in the right manner. And I find that I know Lady Chiltern already.
Really?
Yes, she has just reminded me that we were at school together. I remember it perfectly. She always got the good conduct prize. I have a distinct recollection of Lady Chiltern always getting the good conduct prize.
And what prizes did you get, Mrs. Cheveley?
Oh, my prizes came a little later in life. I don't think any of them were for good conduct. I forget.
I'm sure they were for something charming.
I'm not sure that women are always rewarded for being charming. I think they're usually punished for it. Certainly more women grow old nowadays through the faithfulness of their admirers than through anything else. At least that is the only reason I can account for the terribly haggard look of most of your pretty women in London.
What an appalling philosophy that sounds. To attempt to classify you, Mrs. Cheveley, would be an impertinence. But may I ask at heart, are you an optimist or a pessimist?
Oh, I am neither. An optimism begins in a broad grin, and pessimism ends in blue spectacles. Besides which, both of them are merely posing.
Oh, you prefer to be natural?
Sometimes. Although it is such a very difficult pose to keep up.
What would those modern psychological novelists of whom we hear so much have to say to such a theory as that?
Ah, the strength of women lies in the fact that psychology cannot explain us. Men can be analysed. Women merely adored.
You think science cannot grapple with the problem of women?
Oh, science can never grapple with the irrational. That is why it has no future before it in this world.
And women represent the irrational.
Well-dressed women do.
Now, I fear I can hardly agree with you there. But do sit down. Now, tell me, what makes you leave your brilliant Vienna for our gloomy London? Or perhaps that question is indiscreet.
Questions are never indiscreet. Answers sometimes are.
Well, at any rate, may I know if it is politics or pleasure?
Oh, politics are my only pleasure. You see, nowadays it is not fashionable to flirt till one is 40, or to be romantic till one is 45. So we poor women who are under 30, or say we are, have nothing open to us but politics or philanthropy. And philanthropy seems to me to be simply the refuge of people who wish to annoy their fellow creatures. I prefer politics. I think they are more becoming.
A political life is a noble career.
Sometimes. And sometimes it is a clever game, Sir Robert. And sometimes it is a great nuisance.
And which do you find it?
A combination of all three.
But you've not yet told me what makes you honour London so suddenly. Our season is almost over.
Oh, I don't care for your London season. It's so matrimonial. People are either hunting for husbands or hiding from them. I wanted to meet you. It is quite true. You know what they say of a woman's curiosity. It is almost as great as a man's. I wanted immensely to meet you and to ask you to do something for me.
Oh, I hope it is not a little thing, Mrs. Cheveley. I find little things so very difficult to do.
No, I don't think it is quite a little thing.
I'm so glad. Do tell me what it is.
Later on. And now, may I walk through your beautiful house? Poor Baron Arnheim, do you remember the Baron? He used to tell me that your pictures were charming, that you had some wonderful cohos.
Did you know Baron Arnheim well?
Intimately. Did you?
At one time.
Wonderful man, wasn't he?
He was very remarkable in many ways.
I often think it's such a pity he never wrote his memoirs. They would have been most interesting.
Yes. Yeah, he knew men and cities well, like the old Greek.
Yes, without the dreadful disadvantage of having a Penelope waiting at home for him.
Lord Goring.
Ah, good evening, my dear Arthur. Mrs. Cheveley, allow me to introduce you to Lord Goring, the idlest man in London.
I have met Lord Goring before.
I did not think you would remember me, Mrs. Cheveley.
Oh, my memory is under admirable control. And are you still a bachelor?
I believe so.
Very romantic.
Oh, I am not at all romantic. I'm not old enough. I leave romance to my seniors.
Lord Goring is the result of Boodle's Club, Mrs. Cheveley.
You reflect every credit on the institution.
May I ask, are you staying in London long, Mrs. Cheveley?
Well, it depends partly on the weather, partly on the cooking, and partly on Sir Robert.
Oh, you're not going to plunge us into a European war, I hope.
There is no danger at present.
You are very late.
Have you missed me?
Awfully.
Then I'm sorry I didn't stay away longer. I like being missed.
Not very selfish of you.
I am very selfish.
Lord Goring, you're always telling me of your bad qualities.
My dear Miss Mabel, I have only told you half of them as yet.
Are the others very bad?
Quite dreadful. When I think of them at night, I go to sleep immediately.
Well, I delight in your bad qualities. I wouldn't have you part with one of them.
That is very nice of you to say so, Miss Mabel. But then you are always very nice, aren't you? By the way, I wanted to ask you, who's that woman that's just left the room with your brother, Mrs. Cheveley? Who brought her here?
I think Lady Martby brought her.
Hmm.
Why do you ask?
Well, it's just that I haven't seen her in years, that's all.
What an absurd reason.
All reasons are absurd.
What sort of a woman is she?
Oh, a genius in the daytime and a beauty at night.
I dislike her already.
And that shows your remarkable good taste.
Oh, but the English young lady is the dragon of good taste, is she not? Oh, quite the dragon of good taste.
So the newspapers are always telling us now, Jack?
Oh, I read all your English newspapers. I find them so amusing.
Then you must certainly learn to read between the lines.
I should like to, but my professor objects. Mademoiselle, may I have the pleasure of escorting you to the music room?
Delighted, Vicomte. Quite delighted. Aren't you coming to the music room?
Not if there's any music going on.
Oh, the music is in German. You would not understand it.
Well, sir, what are you doing here? Wasting your life as usual? You should be in bed, sir. You keep too late hours. I heard of you and Lady Rufford dancing until 4 o'clock in the morning.
Only 4:45, Father.
Can't make out how you stand in London society. He has gone to the dogs, all of damn nobodies, talking about nothing.
I love talking about nothing, Father. It's the only thing I know anything about.
You seem to me to be living entirely for pleasure.
What else is there to live for, Father? Nothing ages quite like happiness.
You are very heartless, sir. Very heartless.
Oh, I hope not, Father. Good evening, Lady Basil.
Are you here?
Well, I think so.
I had no idea you ever came to political parties.
I adore political parties. They're the only places left for us where people don't talk politics.
Oh, I delight in talking politics. I talk them all day long, but I can't bear listening to them. I don't know how the unfortunate men in the House stand these long debates.
By never listening.
Really?
Yes, you see, it is a very dangerous thing to listen. If one listens, one may be convinced. And a man who allows himself to be convinced by an argument is a thoroughly unreasonable fellow.
Ah, that explains to me so much in men that I have never understood. And so much in women that their husbands never appreciate in them. Oh, our husbands never appreciate anything in us. We must go to others for that. Oh, yes, always to others, have we not?
And those are the views of the two most admirable women in London who have the most admirable husbands in London.
But that's exactly what we can't stand. Well, my Reginald is quite hopelessly fond of us. He is almost unendurably so.
How
Well, there is not the slightest
greatest element of excitement in knowing him.
Really, the thing should be more widely known.
Well, Basildon is quite as bad. He is as domestic as if he was a bachelor.
My poor Olivia. Well, we have married perfect husbands, and we are well punished for it.
I should have thought it was the husbands who were being punished.
Oh, dear, no. Well, they are as happy as possible. And as for trusting us, it's really quite tragic how much they trust us.
Perfectly tragic.
Or comic, Lady Basildon.
Certainly not comic, Lord Goring. How kind of you to suggest such a thing.
Oh, Lord Goring is in the camp of the enemy, as usual. I saw him talking to that Mrs. Cheveley when he came in.
Handsome woman, Mrs. Cheveley.
Please, don't praise other women in our presence. You might wait for us to do that.
I did wait.
Well, we are not married, afraid, I hear that she went to the opera on Monday night and told Tommy Rufford over supper that as far as she was concerned, London was entirely made up of dowdies and dandies.
And she is quite right, too. The men are all dowdies and the women are all dandies, aren't they?
Do you really think that's what Mrs. Cheveley meant?
Of course she did, and a very sensible remark for Mrs. Cheveley to have made too.
Why are you talking about Mrs. Cheveley? Everybody is talking about Mrs. Cheveley. Lord Goring says. What do you say, Lord Goring, about Mrs. Cheveley? Oh, I remember. That she's a genius in the daytime and a beauty at night. What a horrid combination. So very unnatural.
I like looking at geniuses and listening to beautiful people.
That is morbid of you, Mrs. Marchmont.
Oh, do you really think so? Well, I've been married to Marchmont these past 7 years, and he has never once told me I was morbid. Men are so painfully unobservant.
I have always said that you are the most morbid person in London, Margaret.
Oh, but you were always sympathetic, dear Olivia.
Is it morbid to have a desire for food? I have a great desire for food. Lord Goring, will you give me some supper?
With pleasure, Miss Maple.
How horrid you have been. You have never talked to me the whole evening.
Well, how could I? You went out of the room with that child diplomatist.
You might have followed us. The suit would have been only polite. I don't think I like you at all this evening.
Oh, I like you immensely.
Well, I wish you'd show it in a more marked way.
Well, how could I? I was talking about morbidity and husbands and interesting things.
Olivia, I have an absolute feeling of faintness. I think I should like some supper. I will know I should like some supper very much.
Well, I am positively dying for supper, Margaret.
Men are so horribly selfish. They never think of these things.
Well, men are grossly material. Grossly material.
May I have the honor of taking you down to supper, Comtesse?
I never take supper, thank you. Oh, but I will come down with you with pleasure.
I so adore eating. I am very English in all my tastes.
Oh, you look quite English, Vicomte. Quite English.
Like some supper, Mrs. Marchmont?
Oh, no, I never touch supper. But I will sit beside you and watch you.
I don't know that I like being watched while I'm eating.
Well, then I will watch someone else.
I don't know that I like that either.
Pray, Mr. Montfort, do not make these painful scenes of jealousy.
And are you going to any of our country houses before you leave England, Mrs. Cheveley?
Oh, I can't stand your English house parties. In England, people actually try to be brilliant at breakfast. It's so dreadful. Only dull people are brilliant at breakfast. And then there are the family skeletons, always reading family prayers. No, my stay in England really depends on you, Sir Robert.
Seriously?
Quite seriously. I want to talk to you about a great financial and political scheme. About this Argentine Canal Company, in fact.
What a tedious, practical subject for you to talk about, Mrs. Cheveley.
Oh, I like tedious, practical subjects. What I don't like are tedious, practical people. There is a wide difference. Besides, you are interested, I know, in international canal schemes. You were Lord Radley's secretary, weren't you, when the government bought the Suez Canal shares?
Yes, but the Suez Canal was a very great and splendid undertaking. It gave us our direct route to India. It had imperial value. It was necessary that we should have control. This Argentine scheme is a commonplace stock exchange swindle.
The speculations, Sir Robert, a brilliant, daring speculation. speculation.
Believe me, Mrs. Cheveley, it is a swindle. Let us call things by their proper names. It makes matters simpler. We have all the information about it at the Foreign Office. In fact, I have sent out a special commission to inquire into the matter privately, and they report that the works are hardly begun. And as for the money already subscribed, no one seems to know what's become of it. The whole thing is a second Panama, and with not 1/4 of a chance of success that miserable affair ever had. I hope you've not invested in it. I'm sure you're far too clever to have done that.
Oh, I have invested very largely in it.
Who could have advised you to do such a foolish thing?
Your old friend, and mine.
Who?
Baron Arnheim.
Ah, yes. I remember hearing at the time of his death that he had been mixed up in the whole affair.
Yes, it was his last romance. His last but one, to do him justice.
But you have not yet seen my corals. They're in the music room. Corals seem to go with music, don't you think? May I show them to you?
I'm not in the mood tonight for silver twilights or rose-pink dawns. I want to talk business.
Dear, I had no advice to give you, Mrs. Cheveley, except to interest yourself in something less dangerous. The success of the canal depends, of course, on the attitude of England. And I am going to lay the report of the commissioners before the House tomorrow night.
That you must not do. In your own interest, Sir Robert, to say nothing of mine, you must not do that.
In my own interest, my dear Mrs. Cheveley, what do you mean?
Sir Robert, I shall be quite frank with you. I want you to withdraw the report that you are due to lay before the House, on the grounds that you have reason to believe that the commissioners have been prejudiced or misinformed or something. Then I want you to say a few words to the effect that the government is to reconsider the question, but that you have reason to believe that the canal, if completed, will be of great international value. You know the kinds of things that ministers say in cases of this kind. A few ordinary platitudes will do. In modern life, nothing produces such an effect as a good platitude. It makes the whole world kin. Will you do that for me?
Mrs. Cheveley, you cannot be serious in making me such a proposition.
I am quite serious.
Allow me to believe that you are not.
Ah, but I am. And if you do as I ask, I shall pay you handsomely.
Pay me?
Yes.
I'm afraid I don't quite understand what you mean.
Oh, how very disappointing. And I have come all the way from Vienna in order that you should thoroughly understand me.
Well, I fear I don't.
No, Robert. You're a man of the world. You have your price, I suppose. Everyone has nowadays. The drawback is that most people are terribly expensive. I know I am. I hope you will be more reasonable in your terms.
If you will allow me, I will call your carriage for you. You've spent so long abroad, Mrs. Cheveley, you seem to be unable to realize that you are speaking to an English gentleman.
I realize that I am talking to a man who laid the foundation of his fortune by selling to a stock exchange speculator a cabinet secret.
What do you mean?
I mean that I know the real origin of your wealth and career. And I have your letter, too.
What letter?
The letter you wrote to Baron Arnheim when you were Lord Radley's secretary, telling the Baron to buy Suez Canal shares. A letter written 3 days before the government announced its own purchase.
It isn't true.
You thought that letter had been destroyed, didn't you? How foolish of you. It is in my possession.
The affair to which you allude is no more than a speculation. The House of Commons had not yet passed the bill. It might have been rejected.
It was a swindle, Sir Robert. Let us call things by their proper name. It makes everything simpler. And now I'm going to send that letter. And the price I ask for it is your public support of this Argentine scheme. You made your own fortune out of one canal. You must help me and my friends to make our fortunes out of another.
It is infamous what you propose, infamous.
Oh, no, Sir Robert, this is a game of life and we all have to play it. Sooner or later.
I cannot do what you ask.
You mean you cannot help doing what I ask? You know you're standing on the edge of a precipice, and it is not for you to make terms. It is for you to accept them. Supposing you refuse.
What then?
My dear, but what then? You are ruined, that is all. Remember to what a point your Puritanism in England has brought you. In the old days, nobody pretended to be a bit better than his neighbour. In fact, to be a bit better than one's neighbour was considered excessively vulgar and middle class. Nowadays, with our modern mania for morality, everyone has to pose as a paragon of purity, incorruptibility, and all the other 7 deadly virtues. What is the result? You all go over like 9 pins, one after the other. Not a year passed in England without someone disappearing. Scandal used to lend a charm, or at least interest to a man. Now it crushes you. And yours is a very nasty scandal. You couldn't survive it. If it were known that as a young man, secretary to a great and important minister, that you had sold a cabinet secret for a large sum of money, and that was the origin of your well-known career, you would be hounded out of public office. You would disappear completely. And after all, Sir Robert, why should you sacrifice your entire future rather than deal diplomatically with your enemy? For the moment, I am your enemy, I admit it. And I am much stronger than you are. The big battalions are on my side. Oh, you have a splendid position. But it is that splendid position that makes you so vulnerable. You cannot defend it, and I am in attack. Of course, I have not taught morality to you. You must admit, in fairness, that I have spared you that. Years ago, you did a clever, unscrupulous thing. It turned out a great success. You owe it to your fortune and position. Now, you have to pay for it. Sooner or later in life, we all have to pay what we do. And you have to pay now. Before I leave tonight, you have got to promise me that you will suppress your report, speak in the House in favour of this scheme.
What you ask is impossible.
Then you must make it possible. You are going to make it possible. You know what your English newspapers are like. Supposing that when I leave this place, I were to drive down to some newspaper office and give them this scandal and the proof. Think of their loathsome joy, of the delight they would have in dragging you down, of the mud and mire they would plunge you in. Think of the hypocrite with his greasy smile, penning his leading article and arranging the boughs of a public placard.
Stop! You want me to withdraw the report and make a short speech, stating that I believe there are possibilities in the scheme.
Those are my terms.
I will give you any sum of money that you want.
No, even you are not rich enough, Sir Robert, to buy back your past. No man is.
I will not do what you ask me. I will not.
You have to. If you don't.
Wait a moment. What did you propose? You said that you'd give me back my letter, didn't you?
Yes, that is agreed. I shall be in the House tomorrow night at 11:30. If by that time, and you will have had heaps of opportunity, you have made an announcement to the House in the terms that I wish, I shall hand you back your letter with the prettiest thanks, and the best, or at least the most suitable compliment I can think of. I intend to play quite fairly. One should always play fairly when one has the winning cards. The Baron taught me that, amongst other things.
You must give me time to consider your proposal.
No, you must settle now.
Give me a week, 3 days.
Impossible. I have to telegraph to Vienna tonight.
My God. brought you into my life.
That's
I consent. The report shall be withdrawn. I will arrange to have a question put to me on the subject.
Thank you, Sir Robert. I knew we should reach an amicable arrangement. I analysed you. I understood your nature from the first. Although you did not adore me. And now you get my carriage, Sir Robert. I hear the others coming up from supper, and foolish men always get romantic after a meal, and that bores me dreadfully.
Well, dear Mrs. Cheveley, I hope you have enjoyed yourself. Sir Robert is very entertaining, is he not?
Oh, most entertaining. I have enjoyed my talk with him immensely.
He has had a very interesting and brilliant career and married a most admirable wife. Lady Chiltern is a woman of the very highest principles, I'm pleased to say. I'm a little too old now myself to trouble about setting a good example, but I always admire those who do. And Lady Chiltern has a most ennobling effect upon life, though her dinner parties are rather dull sometimes. One can't have everything, can one? Now, I really must go. Shall I call for you tomorrow?
Oh, thanks.
We might drive in the park at 5. Everything looks so fresh in the park just now.
Except the people.
Oh, well, perhaps the people are a little jaded. I've often observed that the season, as it goes on, produces a kind of softening of the brain. However, I think anything is better than high intellectual pressure. Oh, that is the most unbecoming thing that there is. It makes the noses of the young girls so particularly large. When there is nothing so difficult to marry as a large nose. Men don't like them. Now, goodbye, dear. Goodbye, dear Gertrude.
What a charming house you have, Lady Chiltern. I've spent a most delightful evening. It has been so interesting getting to know your husband.
Why did you wish to meet my husband, Mrs. Cheveley?
Oh, I will tell you. I wanted to interest him in this Argentine canal scheme, of which I dare say you have heard. And I found him most susceptible. Susceptible to reason, I mean. A rare thing in a man. I converted him in 10 minutes. He is to speak in the House in favour of the scheme tomorrow night. You must go into the ladies' gallery and hear him. It will be a great occasion.
There must be some mistake. That scheme could never have my husband's support.
Oh, I assure you it's all settled. Yes, I don't regret my tedious journey from Vienna now. The whole thing has been a great success. But of course, for the next 24 hours, the whole thing is a dead secret. A secret? Between whom? Between your husband and myself.
Your carriage is here, Mrs. Cheveley.
Thanks. Good evening, Lady Chiltern. Good night, Lord Goring. I'm at Claridge's. Don't you think you might leave a card?
If you insist, Mrs. Cheveley.
Oh, don't be so solemn about it, or I should be obliged to leave a card on you. In England, I suppose that would hardly be considered en règle. Abroad, we are more civilized. Will you see me down, Sir Robert? Now that we both have the same interests at heart, we shall be great friends, I hope.
What a horrid woman.
You shall go to bed, Miss Mabel.
Lord Goring.
My father told me to go to bed an hour ago. I don't see why I shouldn't pass on the same advice. I always pass on good advice when I get it. It's never of any use to oneself.
Lord Goring, you are always ordering me out of the room. I think it is most courageous of you, especially as I'm not going to bed for hours. You can come and sit down if you like. Talk to me about anything in the world, except the Royal Academy, Mrs. Cheveley, or novels in Scotch dialect. They're not improving the subject. What's this? Someone has dropped a diamond brooch. Why, be wear anything but pearls, and I'm so thoroughly sick of pearls. They always make one look so plain, so good, and so delightful. I wonder whom the brooch belongs to.
I wonder who dropped it.
It is a beautiful brooch.
It is a handsome bracelet.
It isn't a bracelet, it's a brooch.
But it can be used as a bracelet.
What are you doing?
My dear Miss May, I'm going to make a rather strange request of you.
Oh, pray do. I have been waiting for it all the evening.
Don't mention to anyone that I have got this brooch. Should anyone write and claim it, let me know immediately.
That is a strange request.
Well, it's just, you see, I gave this brooch to someone once many years ago.
You did?
Yes.
Then I shall certainly bid you good night. Good night, Gertrude.
Good night, dear. You saw whom Lady Markby brought here tonight.
Yes, it was an unpleasant surprise. What does she want here?
Apparently to try and lure Robert to uphold some fraudulent scheme in which he's interested. The Argentine canal, in fact.
Ah, then she has certainly mistaken her man, hasn't she?
She's incapable of understanding an upright nature like my husband.
I should imagine she came to grief if she tried to lure Robert into a toil. It's extraordinary what astounding mistakes clever women make.
Oh, I don't call women of that kind clever. I call them stupid.
Same thing often, Lady Chiltern. Good night.
Good night.
My dear Alf, you're not going. Do stop a moment.
I'm afraid I can't, Robert. I promised to look in at the Hartlocks. I believe they've got a Mauve Hungarian band that plays Mauve Hungarian music. Goodbye.
How beautiful you look tonight.
Robert, it's not true, is it? You're not going to uphold this Argentine speculation. You couldn't.
Who told you I intended to do so?
That woman who has just gone out, Mrs. Cheeverley, as she now calls herself, she seemed to taunt me with it. Robert, I know this woman, you don't. We were at school together. She was untruthful, dishonest, an evil influence on all those that she could win her friendship and trust of. I detested her. She still thinks she was a thief. She was sent away for being a thief. Why don't you let her influence you?
Gertrude, what you say may be true, but it happened many years ago. It's best forgotten. Mrs. Cheeverley may have changed since then. No one should be judged entirely by their past.
One's past is what one is. It's the only way by which people should be judged.
That is a hard saying, Gertrude.
It is a true saying, Robert. And what did she mean by boasting to me that she had got you to lend your name, your support, to a scheme I've heard you describe as the most dishonest, fraudulent thing there has ever been in political life?
Well, I was mistaken in the view I took. We all may make mistakes.
But you told me only yesterday that you had received the report from the Commission, and they entirely condemned the whole thing.
Well, now I have reason to believe the commissioners were prejudiced, or at any rate misinformed. Besides, Gertrude, public and private life are very different things. They have different laws and to move on different lines.
But they should both represent man at his highest. I see no difference between them.
The present case is a matter of practical politics. I have changed my mind. That is all.
All?
Yes.
Robert, it is horrible that I should have to ask you such a question. Robert, are you telling me the whole truth?
Why do you ask me such a question?
Why do you not answer it?
Gertrude, truth is a very complex thing. Politics is a very complex business. There are wheels within wheels. One may be under certain obligations to people that one must pay. Sooner or later, in political life, one has to compromise. Everyone does.
Compromise? Robert, why do you talk so differently tonight to the way you have always talked? Why are you so changed?
I'm not changed, but circumstances alter things.
Circumstances should never alter principles.
But if I were to tell you...
What?
That it was necessary, vitally necessary.
It should never be necessary to do what is not honourable. Robert, why are you going to do this dishonourable thing?
Gertrude, you have no right to use that word. I've told you. It was a matter of rational compromise, no more than that.
Robert, that is all very well for other men. Men who treat life simply as a sordid speculation, but not for you, Robert, not for you. You are different.
All your life you have stood apart from others. You have never let the world soil you. To the world as to myself, you have been an ideal always. Oh, be that ideal still. Don't kill my love for you. Don't kill that.
Gertrude.
I know there are men with horrible secrets in their lives, men who have done some shameful act, and at some critical moment have to pay for it by doing some other act of shame. Oh, don't tell me you're such as they. Robert, is there in your life any secret dishonor or disgrace? Tell me at once that...
What?
That our lives may drift apart.
Drift apart?
That we may be entirely separate. It would be better for us both.
Gertrude, there is nothing in my past life that you may not know.
I was sure of it, Robert, I was sure of it. But why did you say those dreadful things? Things so unlike your real self. But let us not talk about the subject again. You will write, won't you, to Mrs. Cheveley, and tell her that you cannot support this scheme of hers. If you have given her a promise, then you must take it back, that is all.
Well, must I write and tell her that?
Well, surely, what else is there to do?
No, I might see her personally, it would be better.
You must never see her again. She's not a woman to speak to. She's not worthy to talk to a man like you. No, you must write at once, this moment now, and let your letter show that your decision is quite irrevocable.
Right this moment?
Yes.
But it is so late. But it goes on 12.
That makes no matter. She must know at once that she has been mistaken in you, that you're not a man to do anything base, underhand, or dishonorable. Right here. Write that you decline to support this scheme of hers, as you hold it to be a dishonest scheme. Yes, use the word dishonest. She knows what that means. Yes, that will do. Now, an envelope. This letter taken at once to Claridge's Hotel. There is no answer.
James?
Robert, love gives one an instinct to things. I feel tonight that I have saved you from something that might have been a danger to you, from something that might have made men honor you less than they already do. I don't think you realize sufficiently that you have brought into the political life of our time a nobler atmosphere and a finer attitude toward life. I know it, and for that I love you, Robert.
Love me always, Gertrude. Love me always.
I will always love you, for you will always deserve my love. We needs must love the highest when we see it.
Put out the lights, please. Put out the lights.
It's a very awkward business, Robert. Very awkward indeed. You should have told your wife the whole thing. Well, secrets from other people's wives are a necessary luxury in modern life. So at least I'm always told by men at the club who are bald enough to know better. But no man should keep a secret from his own wife. Well, she invariably finds it out. Women have a remarkable instinct in these matters. They discover everything, except the obvious.
Arthur, I couldn't joke my wife. When could I have told daughter, not last night. It would have made a lifelong separation between us, and I would have lost the love of the one woman in the world I worship, the only woman who's ever stirred love in me. Last night it would have been quite impossible. She would have turned from me in horror. In horror and in contempt.
Is Lady Chiltern really as perfect as all that?
Yes, my wife is as perfect as all that.
Then I am bound to say you should have told her years ago.
When we were engaged? Do you think she would have married me if she'd known that the origin of my fortune is such as it is, the basis of my career such as it is, and that I'd done a thing which I suppose most men would consider shameful and dishonourable? After all, who did I wrong by what I did? No one.
Except yourself, Robert.
Of course, I had private information about a certain transaction contemplated by the government of the day, and I acted on it. Private information is practically the source of every modern large fortune.
And public scandal invariably the result.
Arthur, do you think it's fair that what I did nearly 18 years ago should be brought up against me now? Is it fair that a man's whole life should be ruined for a fault done in one's boyhood almost? I was 22 at the time, and I had the double misfortune of being both well-born and poor. Two unforgivable things nowadays. Is it fair that the folly, the sin of one's youth, if men choose to call it sin, should wreck a life like mine, should place me in the pillory, should shatter everything that I've built up, all that I've worked for? Is it fair, Arthur?
Life is never fair, Robert. Perhaps it is a good thing for both of us, but it is not.
Every man of ambition should fight his century with its own weapons. What this century worships is wealth. The god of this century is wealth. To succeed, one must have wealth.
You underrate yourself, Robert. Without wealth, believe me, you would have succeeded just as well.
When I was old, perhaps. When I lost my desire for power, I could not use it. When I was tired, worn out, disappointed. I wanted my success when I was young. Youth is the time for success. I couldn't wait.
Well, you certainly had your success while you're still young. No one in our day has had such a great success. Under Secretary for Foreign Affairs by the age of 40. That's good enough for anyone, I should say.
And if it's all to be taken away from me now, if I lose everything over a horrible scandal, if I'm hounded from public life.
But Robert, how could you have sold yourself for money?
I did not sell myself for money. I bought success at a great price. That is all.
Yes, you certainly paid a great price for it. What first made you think of doing such a thing?
Baron Arnheim. Damn scoundrel. No, he was the man of a most subtle and refined intellect. A man of culture, charm, and distinction. One of the most intellectual men I ever met.
Personally, I prefer a gentlemanly fool any day. There's a lot more to be said for stupidity than most people imagine. Personally, I have a great deal of affinity for stupidity. Sort of fellow feeling, I suppose. Tell me, how did he do it? Tell me the whole thing.
One night, after dinner at Lord Radley's, the Baron began to speak to us of success in modern life as something one could reduce to an absolutely different science. To that wonderfully fascinating, quiet voice of his, he expounded to us the most terrible of philosophies, the philosophy of power. Preached to us the most wonderful of gospels, the gospel of gold. I think he could see the effect he produced in me, for some days afterwards he wrote and asked me to come and see him. He was living then in Park Lane, in the house Lord Waltham has now. I well remember how, with a strange smile on his pale, curved lips, he led me through his wonderful picture gallery, showing his tapestries, his jewels, his enamels, his carved ivories, made me wonder at the strange loveliness of the luxury which he knew. And then he told me that such luxury is no more than a backdrop, a painted scene in a play, and that power over other men, power over the whole world is the one thing worth having, the one pleasure worth knowing, the one joy one never tired of. And that in our century, only the rich possess it.
a thoroughly shallow creek.
I didn't think so then. I don't think so now. Wealth has given me enormous power. At the very outset of my life, it gave me freedom. And freedom is everything. You've never been poor. Never known what it is to be ambitious. You can't understand what a wonderful chance the Baron gave me. Such a chance as few men get.
Fortunately for them, if one is to judge by the results. Tell me, finally, how did the Baron persuade you to do what you did?
As I was going away, he said to me that if ever I could give him any private information of real value, he would make me a very rich man. I was dazed at the prospect he held out to me. And my ambition and my desire for power were at that time boundless. 6 weeks later, certain private documents passed through my hands.
State documents?
Yes.
I had no idea that you, of all the men in the world, Robert, could have been so weak as to yield to such a temptation as Baron Arnheim held out to you.
Weak? To stake all one's life on a single moment, to risk everything on one throw? There's no weakness in that. There's a terrible, horrible courage. I had that courage. That same afternoon, I sat down and wrote the Baron the letter this woman has now. He made $750,000 off the transaction.
And you?
I received from the Baron £110,000.
You were worth more, Robert.
No, because that money gave me exactly what I wanted, power over others. I went into the house immediately. The Baron advised me on finance from time to time. Before 5 years, my fortune had almost trebled.
Did you ever suffer any regret for what you've done?
No. I felt that I'd fought the century with its own weapons and won.
You thought that you'd won?
I thought, Arthur, do you despise me for what I've told you?
I am very sorry for you, Robert. Very sorry indeed.
I don't say that I suffered any remorse. I didn't. Not remorse in the ordinary, rather silly sense of the word. But I have paid conscience money many times. I had a wild hope that I might disarm destiny. The sum the Baron gave me, I've distributed in public charities twice over since then.
In public charities? Oh dear me, Robert. Whatever harm you must have done. As regards this other business, of course, I'll give you whatever help I can. You know that, don't you?
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you. But what is to be done? What can be done?
Well, the English can't stand a man who's always saying that he's been in the right. They are very fond of a man who admits that he's been in the wrong. It's one of the best things in them. However, in your case, Robert, a confession would be of no use. It would ruin you.
It would ruin me. Arthur, the only thing I can do now is to fight the thing out.
I was hoping you'd say that. That is the only thing to do now, and you must begin by telling Lady Chiltern the whole thing.
That I will not do.
Believe me, Robert, you are wrong.
I couldn't do it if it wasn't her love for me. Now, about this woman, this Mrs. Cheveley, how can I defend myself against her? You knew her before, apparently, Arthur, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you know her well?
Well, so little, in fact, that we were engaged to be married once. When I was at the Tenbys. The affair lasted for 3 days.
Well, why was it broken off?
Oh, I can't remember. At least it makes no matter. By the way, you tried her with money. She used to be confoundedly fond of money.
I offered her any sum she wanted. She refused.
Ah, so the marvellous gospel of gold breaks down sometimes. The rich can't do everything.
No, not everything. I suppose you're right. Arthur, I feel that public disgrace is in store for me. I feel certain of it. I never knew what terror was before. I know it now. It's as if a hand of ice were placed upon one's heart, as if one's heart were beating itself to death in some empty hollow.
You must fight her, Robert. You must fight her.
But how?
I don't know. Can't tell you at present. I've not the smallest idea. Everybody has some weak point. There is some flaw in each one of us. My father tells me that even I have faults. Perhaps I have.
In defending myself against Mrs. Cheveley, I have the right to use any weapon I can find, have I not?
In your case, Robert, I should not have the smallest scruple in doing so. Mrs. Cheveley is thoroughly well able to take care of herself.
Then I shall send a cipher telegram to Vienna to inquire if there's anything known against her. There may be some secret scandal she might be afraid of. Is Mr. Trafford in this room?
Yes, Sir Robert.
Tell him to have this sent off in cipher at once. There must not be a moment's delay.
Yes, Sir Robert.
She must have had some hold of the Baron. I wonder what it was.
I wonder.
I'll fight her to the death. As long as my wife knows nothing.
Oh, fight her in any case, Robert, in any case.
If my wife found out, there'd be little left to fight for. Well, as soon as I hear anything from Vienna, I'll let you know the result.
Oh, good afternoon, Lord Goring.
Good afternoon, Lady Jill. Have you been in the park?
No, I have just come from the Women's Liberal Association. Oh, where, by the way, Robert, your name was received with loud applause. And now I have come in for my tea. You will stay, won't you, and have some tea?
I'll wait for a short while, thanks.
I won't be long. I'm just going to take my hat off.
Oh, please don't. It's such a pretty hat. One of the prettiest hats I ever saw. I hope that it was received with loud applause by the Women's Liberal Association.
We have much more important work to do than to look at each other's bonnets, Lord Goring.
Really? What sort of work?
Oh, dull, uninteresting, delightful things like the Factory Act, female inspectors, parliamentary franchise. Everything, in fact, that you would find thoroughly uninteresting.
Never bonnets?
Never bonnets. Never.
A good friend to me, Arthur. A thoroughly good friend.
I don't feel as though I've been able to do very much for you as yet, Robert. In fact, I don't think I've been able to do anything for you at all. I am thoroughly disappointed with myself.
You've enabled me to tell the truth. That is something. The truth has always stifled me.
Ah, the truth is a thing I get rid of as quickly as possible. Bad habit, by the way. Makes one thoroughly unpopular with the older members of the club. They call it being conceited. Perhaps it is. Oh, I don't know.
I would to God that I'd been able to tell the truth. To live the truth. That's the great thing in life. To live the truth. Well, yeah, I shall see you again soon, Arthur, shall I?
Oh, certainly, whenever you like. I'm going to the Bachelor's Ball this evening, unless anything better pops up. But if you should want me tonight, send round a note to Curzon Street.
Thank you.
You're not going, Robert.
I have some letters to write, dear.
You work too hard. You never seem to think of yourself, and you're looking so tired.
It's nothing, dear.
Do sit down. I wanted to talk to you about, well, not about bonnets or the Women's Liberal Association. You take far too much interest in the first subject and not nearly enough in the second.
You want to talk to me about Mrs. Cheveley?
Yes, you have guessed it. After you had left last night, I found out that what she told me was true. Of course, I got Robert to write to her immediately, withdrawing his promise.
So he gave me to understand.
To have kept it would have been the first stain on a career that has been stainless. Robert must be above reproach. He's not like other men. He cannot afford to do what other men do. Do you not agree, Lord Goring? You're his greatest friend. You're our greatest friend. No one except myself knows Robert better than you. He has no secrets from me, and I don't think he has any from you.
Well, he certainly has no secrets from me.
Then,
At least I don't think so.
am I not right in my estimate of him, then? Well, I know I am right. But speak to me frankly.
Quite frankly.
Well, surely. You have nothing to conceal, have you?
Nothing. My dear Lady Chiltern, I've often thought that you are a little harsh in some of your views on life. I've sometimes thought that, well, that you don't make sufficient allowances. In every nature, there are elements of weakness, or worse than weakness. Supposing, for instance, that my father, or Lord Merton, or Sir Robert, had many years ago written some foolish letter to somebody.
What do you mean by a foolish letter?
A letter gravely compromising one's position. I'm only putting an imaginary case.
Robert is as incapable of doing a foolish thing as he is of doing a wrong thing.
And nobody is incapable of doing a foolish thing. And nobody is incapable of doing a wrong thing.
Oh, you're a pessimist, Lord Goring. What will the other dandies say? They will have to go into mourning.
No, my dear Lady Chiltern, I'm not a pessimist. In fact, I've often thought that I don't quite know exactly what the word pessimism really means. All I do know that life cannot be lived without much charity. Life cannot be understood without much charity. It is love, not German philosophy, that is the true explanation of this life, whatever may be the explanation of the next. If you are ever in trouble, Lady Chiltern, if you should ever want me, come to me for my assistance and you shall have it. Come at once to me.
Lord Goring, you're talking to me quite seriously. I don't think I've ever heard you talk seriously.
I'm very sorry, Lady Chiltern. I'll make sure that it doesn't occur again.
Oh, but I'd like you to be serious.
Dear Gertrude, don't say such a dreadful thing to Lord Goring. Seriousness would be very unbecoming to him. Good afternoon, Lord Goring. Pray be as trivial as you can.
I should like to, Miss Mabel, but I'm afraid I'm a little out of practice this morning. And besides, I have to be going now.
Just when I have come in. Dreadful manners you have. I'm sure you were very badly brought up.
I was.
I wish I had brought you up.
I'm so sorry you didn't.
Too late now, I suppose.
I'm not so sure.
Will you ride tomorrow morning?
Yes, at 10.
Don't forget.
Of course I won't forget. Lady Chiltern, there is no list of your guests in the Morning Post of today. It's been crowded out by the Lambeth Conference or the County Council or something equally boring. Could you let me have a copy? I have a particular reason for asking it.
I'm sure Mr. Trafford will be able to give you one.
Oh, thanks so much.
Tommy Trafford is the most useful person in London.
And who is the most ornamental?
I am.
How clever of you to get him. 10 tomorrow.
Sure.
Quite sharp, but don't bring Mr. Trafford.
Of course I shan't bring Tommy Trafford. Tommy Trafford is in great disgrace.
I am pleased to hear it.
Oh, Gertrude, I do wish you would speak to Tommy Trafford.
What has poor Mr. Trafford done this time? Robert says he's the best secretary he's ever had.
But Tommy has proposed to me again. Tommy really does nothing but propose to me. He proposed to me last night in the music room while I was quite unprotected, as there was an elaborate trio going on. I didn't dare to make the smallest repartee. I need hardly tell you. If I had, it would stop the music at once. Musical people are so absurdly unreasonable. They always want one to be perfectly dumb at the very moment when one is longing to be absolutely deaf. Then he proposed to me in broad daylight this morning, in front of that dreadful statue of Achilles. Really, the things that go on in front of that work art are quite appalling. The police should interfere. And then Tommy is so annoying in the way he proposes. If he proposed at the top of his voice, I should not mind so much. That might produce some effect on the public. He does it in a horrid, confidential way. When Tommy wants to be romantic, he talks to one just like a doctor. I am very fond of Tommy, but his methods of proposing are quite out of date. I do wish, Gertrude, you would speak to Tommy and tell him that once a week is quite often enough to propose, and that it should always be done in a manner that attracts some attention.
You really shouldn't talk like that, Mabel. Robert thinks very highly of Mr. Trafford. He believes he has a brilliant future before him.
Well, I wouldn't marry a man with a future before him for anything under the sun.
Mabel?
I know, dear. You married a man with a future, didn't you? But then Robert was a genius. And you have a noble, self-sacrificing character and can stand geniuses. I find them quite impossible. Besides, Robert is the genius I could only bear. Geniuses talk so much, don't they? Such a bad habit. And they're always thinking about themselves when I want them to be thinking about me. Well, I must go round now and rehearse. And Lady Battleton, you remember, we're having a tableau, don't you? A triumph of something. I forget what. Maybe it will be triumph of me. Any triumph I'm really interested in at present. Gertrude, do you know who's coming up the stairs? That dreadful Mrs. Cheveley in the most lovely gown. Did you ask her?
Mrs. Cheveley coming here to see me, that's impossible.
I assure you, she is coming up those stairs as large as life, but not nearly so natural.
Mabel, dear, you need not stay. Remember, Lady Basildon is expected.
But I must shake hands with Lady Markby. She is delightful. I love being scolded by her.
Lady Markby and Mrs. Cheveley.
Dear Lady Markby, how nice of you to come and see me. Won't you sit down, Mrs. Cheveley?
Thanks. Isn't that Miss Chiltern? I should like so much to know her.
Mabel, dear, Mrs. Cheveley wishes to know you.
I thought your frock so charming last night, Miss Chiltern. So simple and suitable.
Really? I must tell my dressmaker. It'll be such a surprise to her. Goodbye, Lady Markby.
Going already?
I'm afraid I'm obliged to. I'm just off to rehearsal. I've got to stand on my head in some tableau.
On your head, child? Oh, I do hope not. I believe it is most unhealthy.
This is for an excellent charity, in aid of the undeserving, the only people I'm really interested in at present. I am the secretary, and Tommy Trafford is the treasurer.
And what is Lord Goring?
Lord Goring? Well, he is president.
Oh, the patients suit him admirably, unless he has deteriorated since I first knew him.
You are remarkably modern, Mabel. A little too modern, perhaps. Nothing is so dangerous as being too modern. One is apt to grow old-fashioned quite suddenly. I've known many instances of it.
What a dreadful prospect.
You need not be nervous, my dear. You will always be as pretty as possible, and that is the best fashion that there is, and the only fashion England succeeds in setting.
Well, I thank you, Lady Markby, for England and myself.
Dear Gertrude, we just called to know if Mrs. Cheveley's diamond brooch has been found.
Here? Yes, I missed it when we got back to carriages and thought I might possibly have dropped it here.
Well, I have heard nothing about it, but I will send for the butler and ask.
Oh, pray don't trouble, Lady Chiltern. I dare say I dropped it at the opera before we came on here.
Oh, yes. It must have been at the opera. The fact is, we all scramble and jostle so much nowadays, I wonder we have anything at all left on us at the end of an evening. I know myself. When I'm coming back from the drawing room, I always feel as if I hadn't a shred left on me, except a small shred of decent reputation. Just enough to prevent the lower classes from making painful observations through the windows of the carriage. The fact is, our society is terribly overpopulated. Really, someone should arrange a proper scheme of assisted emigration. I'm sure it would do a great deal of good.
I must say I agree with you, Lady Markby. It is almost 6 years since I was in London for the season, and I must say society has become dreadfully mixed. One sees the oddest people everywhere.
Oh, that's very true, dear, but one needn't know them. I'm sure I don't know half the people who come to my house. Indeed, from all I hear, I shouldn't like to.
What sort of brooch was it that you lost, Mrs. Cheveley?
A diamond snake brooch with a ruby. Rather large.
I thought you said it had a sapphire on the head, dear.
No, Lady Markby, a ruby.
Oh, and very becoming, I'm sure.
Has a diamond and ruby brooch been found in any of the rooms this morning, Mason?
No, my lady.
Oh, it really is of no consequence, Lady Chiltern. I'm so sorry to put you to any inconvenience.
Oh, it's no inconvenience. That will do, Mason. You may bring tea.
It is most annoying to lose anything. I remember once at Bath, years ago, losing in the pump room an exceedingly handsome cameo bracelet that Sir John had given me. I don't think he's ever given me anything since, I'm sorry to say. Oh, he has sadly degenerated. Really, this horrid House of Commons quite ruins our husbands for us. I think the lower house by far the greatest blow to a happy married life that there has been since that terrible thing called the higher education of women was invented.
Oh, it is heresy to say that in this house, Lady Markby. Robert is a great champion of the higher education of women, and so I'm afraid am I.
Oh, the higher education of men is what I should like to see. They need it so sadly.
Oh, they do, dear. But I doubt such a scheme would be very practical. I don't think man has much capacity for development. He's got as far as he can, and that's not very far, is it? With regard to women, well, dear Gertrude, you belong to the younger generation, and I'm sure it is all right if you approve of it. In my time, of course, we were taught not to understand anything. That was the old scheme, and wonderfully interesting it was too. Oh, I assure you, the amount of things that I and my poor dear sister were taught not to understand was quite extraordinary. But modern women understand everything, I am told.
Except their husbands. That is the one thing the modern woman never understands.
Oh, and a very good thing too, dear. It might break up many a happy home if they did. Oh, not yours, I need hardly say, Gertrude. You have married a pattern husband. I wish I could say the same for myself. But since Sir John has taken to attending debates regularly, which he never used to do in the good old days, his language has become quite impossible. He always seems to think he is addressing the House. And consequently, when he discusses the state of the agricultural labourer, or the Welsh church, or something quite improper of that kind, I'm obliged to send all the servants out of the room. It's not pleasant to see one's butler, who has been with one for 23 years, actually blushing at the sideboard. And the footman making contortions in corners like persons in circuses. Oh, I assure you my life will be quite ruined unless they send Sir John at once to the upper house. Well, he won't take any interest in politics then, will he?
I am very much interested in politics, Lady Markby. I love to hear Robert talk about them. Oh, may I offer you some tea, Mrs. Cheveley?
Thanks.
Like some tea, Lady Markby?
Oh, no thanks, dear. The fact is, I promised to call round for 10 minutes to see poor Lady Brancaster, who's in very great trouble. Her daughter, quite a well-brought-up young girl, too, has actually become engaged to be married to a curate in Shropshire. Oh, it's very sad indeed. I can't understand this modern mania for curates. But I'm told nowadays country society is quite honeycombed with them. I think it's most irreligious. And then the eldest son has quarrelled with his father, and it is said when they meet at the club, Lord Brancaster has to hide behind the money article in the Times. However, I believe that is quite a common occurrence nowadays, and that they have to take extra copies of the Times at all the clubs in St. James's Street. There are so many sons who won't have anything to do with their fathers, and so many fathers who won't speak to their sons. I think it is very much to be regretted myself.
So do I. Fathers have so much to learn from their sons nowadays.
Really, dear? What?
The art of living. The only really fine art we have produced in modern times.
Oh, Lord Brancaster knew a great deal about that. Far more than his poor dear wife ever did. Now, you know Lady Brancaster, don't you, dear?
Just slightly. She was staying at Langton last autumn when we were there.
Oh, well, like all stout women, she looks the very picture of happiness, as no doubt you noticed. Oh, but there are many tragedies in her life, besides this affair of the curate. Her own sister, Mrs. Jekyll, led a most unhappy life, through no fault of her own, I'm sorry to say. Oh, she was ultimately so broken-hearted that she went into a convent. Or onto the operatic stage, I forget which. Oh, no, I think it was decorative art legal work she took up. Well, I know she'd lost all sense of pleasure in life. And now, dear Gertrude, if you will allow me, I will leave Mrs. Cheveley in your charge and call back for her in a quarter of an hour. Or perhaps, dear Mrs. Cheveley, you wouldn't mind waiting in the carriage while I am with Lady Brancaster. As I intend it to be a visit of condolence, I shan't stay long.
Oh, I don't mind waiting in the carriage at all, provided there is somebody to look at one.
I hope Mrs. Cheveley will stay a little. I would like a few minutes' conversation with her.
Oh, how very kind of you, Lady Chiltern. Believe me, nothing would give me greater pleasure.
Oh, no doubt you both have many pleasant reminiscences of your school days to talk over together. Goodbye, dear Gertrude. Oh, shall I see you tonight at Lady Bonner's? She has discovered a wonderful new genius. He does nothing at all, I believe. Oh, it is a great comfort, is it not?
Robert and I are dining at home by ourselves tonight, and I don't think I shall go out afterwards. Robert has to be in the house, but there is nothing interesting on.
Dining at home? By yourself? Are you sure that's quite prudent? Oh, I forgot. Your husband is an exception. Mine is the general rule. And nothing ages a woman so rapidly as having married the general rule.
Wonderful woman, Lady Markby, isn't she? Talks more and says less than anybody I ever met. She is made for public speaking, much more so than her husband, although he is a typical Englishman, always dull and usually violent.
Mrs. Cheveley, I think it's only right to tell you quite frankly that had I known who you really were, I should not have invited you to my house last night.
Really?
I could not have done so.
I see that after all these years, Gertrude, you have not changed a bit.
I never change.
And life has taught you nothing.
It has taught me that a person who has once been responsible for a dishonest or dishonourable action may be guilty of it a second time and should be shunned.
How would you apply that rule to everyone?
To everyone without exception.
And I am sorry for you, Gertrude. Very sorry for you.
You see, for many reasons, I think that any further acquaintance between us during your stay in London would be quite impossible.
You know, Gertrude, I don't mind your talking morality a bit. Morality seems to me to be simply the attitude we adopt towards people whom we personally dislike. You dislike me. I'm quite aware of that. And I have always detested you. And yet I come here to do you a service.
Like the service you wished to render my husband last night, I suppose. Thank heaven I saved him from that.
And it was you who made him write that insolent letter, and you who made him break his promise.
Yes.
Then you must make him keep it. I give you till tomorrow morning, no longer. If by that time your husband does not solemnly bind himself to help me in this great scheme of which I am interested.
This fraudulent speculation.
Call it what you like. I hold your husband in the hollow of my hand. And if you are wise, you will make him do as I bid.
You are impertinent. What has my husband to do with you, with a woman like you?
In this world, like meets like. It is because your husband is himself fraudulent and dishonest that we pair so well together. Between you and he, there are chasms. He and I are closer than friends. We are enemies linked together. The same sin binds us.
How dare you class my husband with yourself? How dare you insult him or me? Leave my house. You are unfit to enter it.
Your house. A house bought with the price of dishonour. A house everything in which has been paid for by fraud. Ask him what the origin of his wealth is. Get him to tell you how he sold to a stockbroker, a cabinet secret. Learn from him to what you owe your position.
It is not true, Robert. It is not true.
Look at him. Can he deny it? Does he dare to?
Go at once. You've done your worst now.
My worst? No, I have not finished with you yet. With either of you. I give you both till tomorrow at noon. If by that time you have not done as I bid, the whole world shall know the origin of Robert Chiltern.
Mason! Show Mrs. Cheveley out.
up your career on dishonour. Oh, tell me it is not true. Lie to me, but tell me it is not true.
What this woman says is quite true. But Gertrude, listen to me. You don't understand how I was tempted.
Don't come near me, don't touch me. I feel as though you have soiled me forever. Oh, what a mask you have been wearing all these years, a horrible painted mask. You sold yourself for money. Oh, common thief were better. You put yourself up to sale to the highest bidder, you were bought on the market. You lied to the whole world, and yet you will not lie to me.
Gertrude.
Don't speak, say nothing. Your voice wakes terrible memories. Memories of things that made me love you, memories of words that made me love you, memories that are horrible to me now. Oh, how I worshipped you. You were to me something apart from common life, a thing pure, noble, honest, without stain. The world seemed a better place because you were in it, and goodness more real because you lived. And now when I think that I made of a man like you my ideal, the ideal of my life.
There was your mistake. There was your error. The error all women make. Why can't you, women lovers, faults and all, why do you place us on monstrous pedestals? It is not the perfect, but the imperfect who have need of love. It is when we are wounded by our own hands or by the hands of others that love should come to cure us. Else what use is love at all? All sins, except a sin against itself, love should forgive. All lives, save loveless lives, true love should pardon. Women think they are making ideals of men. What they are making of us are false idols merely. You made your false idol of me, and I had not the courage to come down, show you my wounds, tell you my weaknesses. I was afraid that I might lose your love, as I have lost it now. Let women make no more ideals of men. Let them not place them on altars and bow down before them. Or they may ruin other lives as completely as you, whom I have so wildly loved, have ruined mine.
Got my second buttonhole for me, Phipps?
Yes, my lord.
It's a rather a distinguished thing, Phipps. Do you know, I'm the only person in London of the smallest importance at present who wears a buttonhole.
Yes, my lord. I have observed that.
Fashion is what one wears oneself. What is unfashionable is what others wear.
Yes, my lord.
Just as vulgarity is simply the conduct of others.
Yes, my lord.
And falsehood to the truths of other people.
Yes, my lord.
Other people are quite dreadful. The only possible society is oneself.
Yes, my lord.
To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance.
Yes, my lord.
Really, I quite like this buttonhole. It makes me look a little too old. Makes me almost in the prime of my life, eh, Phipps?
I don't observe any alteration in your lordship's appearance.
You don't?
No, my lord.
No, I'm not so sure. For the future, a more trivial buttonhole on Thursday evenings, Phipps.
I will speak to the florist, my lord. She has had a recent loss in her family, which may account for the lack of triviality that your lordship complains of in the buttonhole.
Extraordinary thing about the lower classes in England, they're always losing their relations.
Yes, my lord. They are extremely fortunate in that respect.
Any letters, Phipps?
3, my lord.
My carriage round in 20 minutes.
Yes, my lord.
Phipps, when did this letter arrive?
It was brought by hand just after your lordship left for the club.
That will be all. Lady Chiltern's handwriting on Lady Chiltern's pink notepaper. I thought Robert was to write. That's rather confusing. I wonder what Lady Chiltern's got to say to me. I want you, I trust you, I am coming to you, Gertrude. I want you, I trust you, I am coming to you. So she has found out everything. Oh, poor woman, poor woman. What an hour to call, and it must be... This is 10 o'clock. I shall have to give up going to the Berkshires. Oh. However, it's always nice to be expected and not to arrive. I'm not expected at the Bachelors, so I shall certainly go there. Well, I shall make a stick by a husband. It's the only thing for her to do. It's the only thing for any woman to do. It's the growth of moral sense in women that makes marriage such a hopeless, one-sided institution anyway. 10 o'clock. She'll be here soon. I must tell Fitz I'm not into anyone else.
Lord Caversham.
Why do parents always turn up at the wrong moment? Some extraordinary mistake in nature, I suppose. Delighted to see you, my dear father.
Take the cloak off.
Is it worthwhile, father?
Of course it is worthwhile, sir. Which is the most comfortable chair?
This one, father. It's the chair I use myself when I have visitors.
Thank you. No draughts, I hope, in this room?
No, father.
Glad to hear it. Can't stand draughts. No draughts at home.
Too many breezes, though, father.
Hey, don't understand what you mean. Want to have a serious conversation with you, sir?
My dear father, at this hour?
Oh, sir, it is only 10 o'clock. What is your objection to the hour? I think the hour is an admirable hour.
Well, the fact is, father, this is not my day for talking seriously. I'm terribly sorry, but this is simply not my day.
What do you mean, sir?
During the season, father, I only talk seriously on the first Tuesday in every month. Between the hours of 4 and 7.
Well, make it Tuesday, sir. Make it Tuesday.
Yes, but it is after 7, father. My doctor has told me I'm not to have any serious conversation after 7. It makes me talk in my sleep.
Talk in your sleep. What does that matter, sir? You are not married.
No, I am not married, father.
That is what I have come to talk to you about, sir. You have got to get married, and at once. When I was your age, sir, I had been an inconsolable widower for 3 months. I was already paying the addresses to your admirable mother. And damn me, sir, it's your duty to get married. You can't be always living for pleasure. Every man of position is married nowadays. Bachelors are not fashionable anymore. They are a damaged lot. Too much is known about them. You must get a wife, sir. Look where your friend Robert Chiltern has got to with probity and hard work and a sensible marriage to a good woman. Now, why don't you make him your example, sir? Why don't you do as he does?
I think I shall, Father.
Well, I wish you would, sir. And then I should be happy. Present, make your mother's life a misery on your account. You are very heartless, sir, very heartless.
I hope not, Father.
And then it is high time for you to get married. You are 34 years of age, sir.
Yes, but Father, I only admit to 32. 31 and a half when I have a really good buttonhole. This
I tell you, you are 34, sir. And there is a draft in this room beside which makes your conduct worse. Why did you tell me there was no draft, sir? I feel a draft, sir. I feel it distinctly.
You are quite right, Father. There is a dreadful draft in this room. I will come and see you tomorrow and we can talk over anything you like. Let me help you on with your clothes.
No, sir. I have called this evening for a definite purpose, and I am going to see it through at all costs, to my health or yours. Now put down my cloak, sir.
Certainly, Father. But let us go into another room. There is a dreadful draft here. Phipps, is there a good fire in the smoking room?
Yes, my lord.
Oh, come in here, Father. Your coughs are quite heart-rending.
Well, sir, I suppose I have the right to cough when I choose.
Certainly, Father. I was merely expressing sympathy.
Oh, damn sympathy. There is a great deal too much of that sort of thing nowadays.
I quite agree, Father. If there were less sympathy in the world, there would be less trouble in the world.
That is a paradox, sir. I hate paradoxes.
So do I, Father. Everybody one meets is a paradox. It makes us so obvious.
Do you always really understand what you say, sir?
Yes, Father. If I listen attentively.
Listen attentively. Seated young puppy.
There is a lady coming to see me this evening on a particular business. When she arrives, show her into the drawing room. You understand, Phipps?
Yes, my lord.
It is a matter of the gravest importance, Phipps.
I understand, my lord.
No one else is to be admitted under any circumstances.
I understand, my lord.
That is probably the lady now. I shall see her in my salon.
Well, sir, am I to wait attendance on you?
In a moment, Father. Please do be patient. Very well, Phipps. Remember my instructions. Into that room. You understand?
Yes, my lord.
Here, Father. Now, look here.
Good evening, madam.
Is Lord Goring not here? I was told he was at home.
Lord Goring is presently engaged with Lord Caversham, madam.
Oh, how very filial.
His lordship told me to ask you to be kind enough to wait for him in the drawing room. His lordship will come to you there.
Lord Goring expects me.
Yes, madam.
Are you quite sure?
His lordship told me that if a lady called, I was to ask her to wait in the drawing room. His lordship's instructions on the matter were very precise.
How very thoughtful of him. To expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly modern intellect.
Yes, how very dreary a bachelor's drawing room always looks.
I shall have to alter all that. No, I don't care for that lamp. It's far too glaring. Light some candles.
Certainly, madam.
I hope the candles have very becoming shades.
We have had no complaints about them, madam. As yet.
I wonder what woman he is waiting for tonight. It will be delightful to catch him. Men always look so silly when they are caught. And they are always being caught. What a very interesting room. Oh, a very interesting picture. I wonder what his correspondence is like. Oh, what very uninteresting correspondence. Bills, cards, debts, and dowagers. I wonder who on earth writes to him on pink paper. How very silly to write on pink paper. Looks like the beginning of a middle-class romance. And romance should never begin with sentiment. It should begin with science. and end in a settlement. I know that writing. It's Gertrude's duties. I remember it perfectly. The 10 commandments in every stroke of the pen and the moral law written over the page. I wonder what on earth she's writing to him about. Something horrid about me, I expect. I detest that thing. I want you, I trust you, I am coming to you. Gertrude. I want you, I trust you, I am coming to you.
The candles in the drawing room are lit, madam, as you directed. I trust the shades will be to your satisfaction. They are the most becoming we have. They are the same that his lordship uses when he dresses for dinner.
Then I'm sure they will be perfectly right.
Thank you, madam. My dear Father, if I am to get married, surely you will allow me the chance to choose the time, the place, and the person. Particularly the person.
No, sir, that isn't a matter for me. You would probably make a very poor choice. There is property at stake. It's not a matter for affection. Affection comes later on in married life.
Yes, in married life, affection comes when people thoroughly dislike each other.
Certainly, sir. I mean, certainly not, sir. You are talking very foolishly tonight. What I say is that marriage is a matter for common sense.
Those women who have common sense are so curiously bland, aren't they, Father? Of course, I'm only speaking for his.
No woman, plain or pretty, has any common sense at all, sir. Common sense is a prerogative of our sex.
Yes, and we men are so self-sacrificing that we never use it.
I use it, sir. I use nothing else.
So my mother always tells me.
It is the secret of your mother's happiness. You are quite heartless, sir. Quite heartless.
Oh, I hope not, Father.
My dear Arthur, what a piece of good luck meeting you on the doorstep. Your servant had told me you were not at home.
Well, the truth is, Robert, I'm extraordinarily busy this evening, and I gave strict instructions that I was not home to anyone. Even my father got a comparatively cold reception, complained of a draft the entire time.
My wife has discovered everything.
Ah, I thought as much. Who told her?
Mrs. Cheveley herself. And now the woman I love knows that I began my career with an act of low dishonesty. That I built up my life on sands of shame, that I sold, like a common huckster, the secret entrusted to me as a man of honour.
Have you heard nothing back from Vienna yet in response to your wife?
Yes, I had a telegram from the first secretary at 8 o'clock tonight.
Well?
Nothing is known absolutely against her. On the contrary, she seems to occupy a rather high position in society. It's a sort of open secret that Baron Arnheim left her the greater portion of his immense fortune. Beyond that, I can learn nothing.
She doesn't turn out to be a spy, then?
Oh, spies are of no use nowadays. Their profession is over. The newspapers do their work instead.
And thunderingly well they do it, too.
Arthur, I'm parched with thirst. May I ring for something, some hock and such?
Oh, certainly, let me.
Thank you. I don't know what to do. Arthur, I don't know what to do, and you're my only friend. What a friend you are. The one friend I can trust. I can trust you absolutely, can't I?
Of course you can, Robert, of course you can. Phipps, fetch some hock and seltzer.
Yes, my lord.
And Phipps, you will excuse me, won't you, Robert? I want to issue some instructions to my servant.
Sir.
Phipps, when that lady arrives, tell her that I'm not expected home this evening. Tell her that I've suddenly been called out of town. You understand?
The lady is in that room, my lord. You told me to ask her to wait in that room, my lord.
Ah. Yes, you did perfectly right, Phipps. That will be all. What a mess I'm in. I shall get through it somehow.
Arthur, tell me what I should do.
Robert, you love your wife, don't you?
I love her more than anything in the world.
Has she never, in her life, done some folly, some indiscretion that she can not now forgive yours?
My wife? Never. She does not know what weakness or imperfection is. I am of clay like other men. She stands apart as good women do, pitiless in her perfection, stern and cold and without mercy. But I love her, Arthur. We are childless, and there's no one else for me to love. No one else to love me.
Your wife will forgive you, Robert. Perhaps at this moment she is forgiving you. She loves you, why should she not forgive?
God grant it, God grant it. But, Arthur, there is something more I have to tell you.
Hock and seltzer.
Thank you.
Robert, is your carriage outside?
No, I walked from the club.
Sir Robert will take my cab, please.
Yes, my lord.
Robert, you will excuse me for sending you away, won't you?
Arthur, you must let me stay for 5 minutes. I've made up my mind what I'm going to do in the House tonight. The debate on the Argentine Canal begins at 11 o'clock. What's that?
Nothing.
I had a chair fall in the next room. Someone's been listening.
No, there's no one there.
There is someone. There are lights in the room and the door is ajar. Someone's been listening to every secret of my life. Arthur, what does this mean?
Robert, you are excited. Unnerved. There's no one there. Sit down, Robert.
Do you give me your word there's no one there?
Yes.
Your word of honour?
Yes.
Arthur, let me see for myself. There is no one there. Why should I not look into that room? Let me know that no eavesdropper has heard my life's secret. Arthur, you don't realise what I'm going through.
Robert, this must stop. I have told you that there is no one in that room. That is enough.
It is not enough. I insist on going into that room. You've told me that there is no one there. What reason can you have for refusing me?
For God's sakes, there is someone there. Someone whom you must not see.
I thought so.
I forbid you to enter that room.
My life is at stake. And I don't care who is there. I will know who it is to whom I've told my secret and my shame.
Great heaven, his own wife.
What explanation have you to give me for the presence of that woman here?
Robert, I swear to you on my honour that that lady is shameless and guiltless of all offence towards you.
She is a vile and infamous.
Don't say such a thing, Robert. It was for your sake she came here tonight. It was to try and save you she came here tonight. She loves you and no one else.
You're mad. What have I to do with her intrigues with you? Let her remain your mistress. You're well suited to each other. She shameful and corrupt, you false as a friend, treacherous as an enemy even.
It is not true, Robert. Before heaven it is not true. In her presence and yours, I will explain everything.
Let me pass, sir. You've lied enough upon your word of honour.
Good evening, Lord Goring.
Mrs. Cheevely, may I ask just exactly what you were doing in my drawing room?
Merely listening. I have a perfect passion for listening at keyholes. One always hears such wonderful things through them.
Doesn't that rather sound like tempting Providence?
Oh, surely Providence can resist temptation by this time.
I'm glad you've called. I'm going to give you some good advice.
Oh, pray don't. One should never give a woman anything that she cannot wear in the evening.
I see you are quite as willful as you used to be.
Far more. I have greatly improved. I have had more experience.
You've come to sell me Robert Chiltern's letter, haven't you?
To offer it to you on conditions. How did you guess that?
Because you haven't mentioned the subject. You got it with you?
Oh no. A well-made dress has no pockets.
What is your price for it?
Oh, how absurdly English you are. The English always think that a checkbook can solve every problem in life. My dear Arthur, I have very much more money than you have, and quite as much as Robert Chiltern has managed to get hold of.
Well, what do you want, Mrs. Cheevely?
Why don't you call me Laura?
I don't like the name.
You just do it.
Yes, that's why.
Arthur loved me once.
Yes.
And you asked me to become your wife.
Well, that was the natural result of my loving you.
And you threw me over because you saw, or said you saw, poor old Lord Mortlake trying to have a violent flirtation with me in the conservatory at Tenby.
I am under the impression that my lawyer settled that matter with you under certain circumstances dictated by yourself.
Well, at the time I was poor and you were rich.
Quite so, which is why you pretended to love me.
Poor old Lord Mortlake. He only ever had two topics of conversation, his gout and his wife. I never could work out which of the two he was talking about. You were silly, Arthur. Lord Mortlake was never anything more to me than an amusement. I loved you.
My dear Mrs. Cheveley, you are far too clever to know anything about love.
I did love you. And you love me, you know you did. And love is a very wonderful thing. I suppose that when a man has once loved a woman, he will do anything for her, except to continue to love her.
Yes, except that.
I'm tired of living abroad. I want to come back to England. When I saw you last night at the Chiltern, I realised that you were the only person that I have ever cared for. If I have ever cared for anyone. And so, on the morning of the day that you marry me, I shall give you Robert Chiltern's letter. That is my offer. I shall give it to you now. If you promise to marry.
Now,
Tomorrow.
are you really serious?
Yes, quite serious.
I should make you a very bad husband.
No, I don't mind bad husbands. I've had two already. They amuse me immensely.
You mean that you amused yourself immensely, don't you?
What do you know about my married life?
No, nothing, but I can read it like a book.
What?
The Book of Numbers.
Do you think it is quite charming of you to be so rude to a woman in your own house?
In the case of very fascinating women, sex is a challenge, not a defence.
I suppose that is meant as a compliment. My dear Arthur, women are never disarmed by compliments. Men always are. That is the difference between the two sexes.
Women are never disarmed by anything as far as I know them, Mrs. Cheveley.
Then you are going to allow your greatest friend Robert Chiltern to be ruined, rather than to marry someone who has considerable attractions left. My dear Arthur, I thought you would have risen to some great heights of self-sacrifice. I think you should, and the rest of your life you could spend in contemplating your own perfection.
I do that as it is, Mrs. Cheveley. And as for self-sacrifice, why, that's a thing that should be put down by law. It's always so demoralising for the people for whom one sacrifices oneself. They always go for the bad.
As if anything could demoralise Robert Chiltern. You seem to forget that I know his real character.
What you know of Robert Chiltern is not his real character. It was an act of folly conducted in his youth. Dishonourable, I admit. Shameful, I admit. Unworthy of him, I admit, and therefore not his true character.
How you men stand up for each other.
How you women war with each other.
I only war against one woman. Gertrude Chiltern. I hate her. I hate her now more than ever.
Because you have brought a real tragedy into her life.
Oh, there is only one tragedy in a woman's life. The fact that her past is always her lover, and her future invariably her husband.
Lady Chiltern knows nothing of the kind of life to which you are alluding.
Well, I suppose this romantic interview may be regarded as at an end. You do admit it was romantic, don't you? For the privilege of being your wife, I was ready to surrender a great prize, the climax of my diplomatic career. You decline. Very well. If Robert Chiltern doesn't uphold my Argentine scheme, I expose him. Voila, do.
You mustn't do that. It will be horrible, vile, infamous.
Oh, don't you speak words. They mean so very little. It is a commercial transaction, that is all. It is no good mixing sentimentality in it. I offer to sell Robert Chiltern a certain thing. If he won't pay me my price, he shall have to pay the world a right price. That is all there is to it. Well, I must go. Goodbye. Won't you shake hands?
With you? No. Your transaction with Robert Chiltern may pass as a loathsome commercial transaction of a loathsome commercial age. You seem to forget that you came here tonight to talk of love. You whose lips desecrate the word love. You to whom the thing is a book closely sealed, went this afternoon to the house of one of the most noble and gentle women in London, to degrade her husband in her eyes, to ruin her love for him, to break her heart and spoil her soul. That was unforgivable. That I cannot forgive.
You are unjust to me, Arthur. Believe me, you are quite unjust to me. I didn't go to taunt Gertrude at all. I had no idea of doing anything of the kind. I called with Lady Markby simply to find out whether a jewel, an ornament that I had dropped had been found there. If you don't believe me, you can ask Lady Markby. She will tell you that it's true. The scene that occurred happened after Lady Markby's left and was really forced on me by Gertrude's rudeness and sneers. Oh, I couldn't admit that, as I suppose. But really to find out whether a diamond brooch that I had dropped had been found there. That was the origin of the whole thing.
A diamond snake brooch with a ruby.
Yes. How do you know?
Because it is found. In point of fact, I found it myself and very stupidly forgot to tell the butler anything about it as I was leaving. It's in this drawer here. What is it?
Yes, oh, I'm so glad to get it back. It was a present.
No. Won't you wear it?
Yes, certainly, if you pin it in. Why do you put it on as a bracelet? I never knew it could be worn as a bracelet.
Really?
No, it looks very well on me as a bracelet, doesn't it?
Much better than when I last saw it.
Oh, when did you last see it?
10 years ago on Mary Berkshire, from whom you stole it.
What do you mean?
I mean, you stole that ornament from Lady Berkshire, to whom I gave it when she was married. I saw it last night and recognized it at once. But I determined to say nothing until I had found the thief. Well, I have found the thief now. And I have heard her confession.
It is not true.
Oh, you know it's true. My thief is written all across your face at present.
I will deny the whole affair from beginning to end. I will say I've never seen the wretched thing, that it was never in my possession.
The drawback of stealing a thing, Mr. Cheveley, is that one never realizes how wonderful the thing that one has stolen is. You see, you can't get that bracelet off unless you know where the spring is. And I can see you don't know where the spring is. It is remarkably difficult to find.
You brute! You coward!
Oh, don't use such big words. They mean so little.
What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to call my manservant. He's an admirable manservant, always comes in the minute that he is called. And when he comes in, I am going to ask him to fetch the police.
Police? What for?
Well, tomorrow the Berkshires will prosecute you. That is what the police are for.
No, please don't do that. I will do anything in the world that you ask.
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
Stop. Let me have time to think.
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
Don't have it with me. I'll give it to you tomorrow.
You know that you are lying. Give it to me now. Is this it? You know, Mrs. Cheveley, for so well-dressed a woman, you have moments of admirable common sense. I congratulate you.
Please, could you get me a glass of water?
Oh, certainly.
Will you help me on with my cloak?
With pleasure.
I'm never going to try to harm Robert Chiltern again.
Fortunately, I've not the chance.
No, well, even if I had the chance, I wouldn't.
I'm charmed to hear it. It is a reformation.
On the contrary, I'm going to render him a great service. You see, I can't bear the thought of so honourable a gentleman, so upright an English gentleman, being so shamefully deceived. And so...
Well?
I find that somehow Gertrude Chiltern's dying speech and confession has strayed into my bag.
What do you mean?
I mean that I'm going to send Robert Chiltern the love letter that his wife brings you tonight.
Love letter?
I want you. I trust you. I am coming to you. Gertrude.
You wretched woman, must you always be thieving? Give me that! Give it back to me at once!
Lord Goring merely wishes that you show me out. Good night, Lord Goring.
It is a great nuisance. I cannot find anybody in this house to talk to, and I am full of interesting information. I feel like the latest edition of something or other.
Sir Robert is still at the Foreign Office, my lord.
Lady Chiltern not down yet?
Her ladyship has not yet left her room. Miss Chiltern has just come in from riding.
Ah, that is something.
Lord Caversham has been waiting some time in the library to see Sir Robert. I told him you were here.
Oh, thank you very much. Would you kindly tell him I've gone?
I shall do so.
Really, I don't want to see my father 3 days running. It was a great deal too much excitement for any son today. I hope he doesn't come up. Fathers should be neither seen nor heard. That's the only proper basis of family life. Mothers are different. Mothers are darlings.
Well, sir, what are you doing here? Wasting your time as usual, I suppose?
My dear father, when one pays a visit, it is for the purposes of wasting other people's time.
Have you been thinking over what I spoke to you about last night?
I've been thinking over nothing else, father.
Ah, engaged to be married yet?
Not yet, but I hope to be so before lunchtime.
Have until dinner, if it be any inconvenience to you.
Thanks awfully, but I think I'd rather be engaged before lunch.
Never know when you're serious and when you're not.
Neither do I, father.
I suppose you read the Times this morning?
The Times? Well, certainly not. I only get the Morning Post. All that one needs to know is about life is where the duchesses are. Anything else is quite demoralising.
Don't you mean to tell me that you have not read the Times leading article on Robert Chiltern's career?
Certainly not. What does it say?
Well, what should it say, sir? Everything complimentary, of course. Chiltern's speech last night on this Argentine canal scheme was one of the finest pieces of oratory ever delivered in the House, since Canning.
Ah, I've never heard of Canning, never wanted to either. Tell me, what does it say about Robert? Did he uphold the scheme?
Uphold it, sir? How little you know it. Why, he denounced it roundly. And the whole modern system of political finance. This speech is the turning point in his career, as the Times points out. And you should read this article, sir. Robert Chiltern, brilliant orator, unblemished career, well-known integrity of character, represents what is best in English public life. Noble contrast to the lax morality so common among foreign politicians. They will never say that of you, sir.
I certainly hope not. However, I'm delighted at what you said, I'm thoroughly delighted. It shows you've got pluck.
He has got more than pluck, sir. He has got genius.
I prefer pluck. It's not so commonplace nowadays as genius is.
I wish you would go into Parliament.
Only people who look dull ever get into the House of Commons, and only people who are dull ever succeed there.
Why don't you try to do something useful in life?
I am far too young.
I hate this affectation of youth, sir. It is a great deal too prevalent nowadays.
Youth is not an affectation, youth is an art.
Why don't you propose to that pretty Miss Chiltern?
I'm of far too nervous a disposition, Father, especially in the morning.
I suppose there is the smallest chance of her accepting you.
I have no idea how the betting stands today.
If she did accept you, she would be the prettiest fool in England.
Just what I should like to marry. A thoroughly sensible wife would reduce me to a condition of absolute idiocy in less than 6 months.
You don't deserve her, sir.
My dear Father, if we men married the women we deserve, we should have a thoroughly bad time of it.
Oh, how do you do, Lord Caversham? I do hope Lady Caversham is quite well.
Oh, Lady Caversham is as usual. As usual.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
And Lady Caversham's bonnets, are they all better?
They have suffered a serious relapse, I'm sorry to say.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
I hope an operation will be necessary.
But if it is, we shall have to give Lady Caversham a narcotic. Otherwise, she would never consent to have a feather touched.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
Oh, are you here? Of course, you understand that after your breaking your appointment, I'm never going to speak to you again.
Oh, please don't say such a thing, Mabel. You know, you're the only person in London I really like to have listen to me.
Lord Goring, I never believe a single word either you or I say to each other.
You're quite right, my dear, quite right, at least as far as he is concerned, I mean.
Do you think you could possibly make your son behave a little better occasionally? Just as a change?
Oh, no, I regret to say, Miss Chiltern, I have no influence at all over my son. If I had, I know what I would make him do.
He has one of those terribly weak natures that are not susceptible to influence.
He's very heartless, very heartless.
It seems to me that I'm a little in the way here.
This is a very good idea for you to be in the way, to know what people say of you behind your back.
It is not at all good for me to know what people say of me behind my back. Makes me far too conceited.
After that, my dear, I'm afraid I shall have to bid you good morning.
You're not going to leave me all alone with Lord Goring, especially at such an early hour in the day.
Well, I'm afraid I can hardly take him with me to Downing Street. It is not the Prime Minister's day for seeing the unemployed.
People who don't keep their appointments in the park are horrid.
Detestable.
I'm glad you admit it. I do wish you wouldn't look so pleased about it.
I can't help it, Mabel. I always look pleased when I'm with you.
And I suppose it is my duty to remain with you.
Of course it is.
Well, my duty is a thing I never do. On principle, it always depresses me. So I'm afraid I must leave you.
Oh, please don't go, Mabel. Something particular to say to you.
Oh? Is it a proposal?
Well, yes it is. I'm bound to say it is.
I'm so glad. That makes the second today.
The second today? What conceited ass has been impertinent enough to propose to you before I have proposed to you?
Tommy Trafford, of course. It is one of Tommy's days for proposing. He always proposes on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the season.
You didn't accept him,
I make it a rule never to accept Tommy. That is why he goes on proposing. Of course, as you didn't turn up this morning, I very nearly said yes. It would have been an excellent lesson both for him and for you if I had. Both better manners.
Oh, bother Tommy Trafford. Tommy Trafford is a silly little ass. I love you.
I know. And I think you might have mentioned it before. I'm sure I've given you heaps of opportunities.
Do be serious, Mabel. Please, be serious.
That is the sort of thing a man always says to a girl before he has been married to her. He never says it afterwards.
Mabel, I've told you that I love you. Can't you love me a little in return?
You silly Arthur. If you knew anything about anything, which you don't, you would know that I adore you. Everyone in London knows it except you. It is a public scandal the way that I adore you. I have been going about for the past 6 months telling the whole of society that I adore you. I wanted you consent to have anything to say to me. I have no character left at all. At least, I feel so happy that I'm quite sure I have no character left at all.
Darling. Do you know, I was horribly afraid of being refused.
But you never have been refused yet by anybody, have you, Arthur? I can't imagine anyone refusing you.
I'm not really good enough for you, Mabel.
I am so glad, darling. I was afraid you were.
I'm a little over 30.
Dear, you look weeks younger than that.
It's sweet of you to say so, and I think it's only fair to point out that I'm fearfully extravagant.
But so am I. So we're sure to agree. Now, I must go and see Gertrude.
Oh, must you really?
Yes.
Oh, then tell her that I have something particular to say to her, that I've been waiting here all morning to either her or Robert.
Do you mean to say you didn't come here expressly to propose to me?
No, that was a flash of genius.
You're first.
Why not?
I'm very glad to hear it. Now, don't stir. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Don't fall into any temptations while I'm away.
My dear Mabel, while you are away, there are none. It makes me horribly dependent on you.
Good morning, my dear. How pretty you are.
How pale you looking, Gertrude. What is most becoming.
Good morning, Lord Goring.
Good morning, Lady Chill.
I shall be in the conservatory, under the second palm tree on the left.
Second palm tree on the left.
Yes, the usual palm tree.
Lady Chiltern, I have a certain amount of very good news to tell you. Mrs. Cheeverley gave me up Robert's letter last night and I destroyed it. Robert is quite safe.
Oh, safe. Oh, I'm so glad of it. What a good friend you are to him. To us.
There is only one person now who is said to be in any danger.
Who is that?
Yourself.
I? In danger? What do you mean?
Danger is perhaps too great a word. It is perhaps a word I should not have used. But I must admit that I have something to tell you that may distress you, that terribly distresses me. Last night, you wrote me a very beautiful, womanly letter, in which you asked me for my help. You wrote to me as one of your oldest friends, as one of your husband's oldest friends. Well, Mrs. Cheeverley stole that letter from my rooms.
Well, what use is it to her? Why should she not have it?
Lady Chiltern, I will be quite frank. Mrs. Cheeverley puts a certain construction on that letter and proposes to send it to your husband.
But what construction could she put on it? No, not that. That. Oh, are there women as horrible as that? And she proposes to send it to my husband? Tell me what happened. Tell me all that happened.
Well, Mrs. Cheeverley was concealed in a room adjoining my library without my knowledge. I thought that the person that was in that room was yourself. As Sir Robert came in unexpectedly, a chair or something fell in the room, and he forced his way in and discovered her. I still thought the person there was you. Well, there was a terrible scene. Robert left in anger. And at the end of everything, Mrs. Cheeverley somehow got hold of your note. She stole it. When or how, I don't know.
At what hour did this happen?
10:30. Now I propose that we tell Robert the whole thing at once.
You want me to tell my husband that it was not Mrs. Cheeverley you expected last night, but myself? That it was I whom you thought was concealed in a room at your house at 10:30 at night? You want me to tell him that?
Lady Chiltern, I think it better that he knows the exact truth.
I couldn't.
Believe me, you are wrong, Lady Chiltern.
No, the letter must be intercepted, that is all. But how can I do it? Letters arrive from every moment of the day. His secretaries open them and hand them to him. I dare not ask the servants to bring me his letters. It would be impossible. Oh, why don't you tell me what I should do?
Pray be calm, Lady Chiltern. Answer the following questions I'm going to put you. You say Robert's secretaries answer all his letters.
Yes.
Who's with him today? Mr. Trafford?
No, Mr. Mumford, I think.
You can trust him.
Well, how do I know?
Well, he would do what you asked, wouldn't he?
I think so.
Your letter was written on pink notepaper. He could recognize it, couldn't he, without reading it by the colour?
I suppose so.
Is he here today?
Yes.
Well, then I will go and see him myself and tell him that a certain letter written on pink notepaper is to be forwarded to Robert today, and at all costs it must not reach him. Maybe Chiltern. Sir Robert is coming upstairs with the note in his hand. It has reached him already.
You saved his life. What have you done with mine?
I want you. I trust you. I'm coming to you, Gertrude.
Oh, my love, is this true?
Do you indeed want me and trust me? If so, it was for me to come to you, not for you to write of coming to me. This letter of yours, Gertrude, makes me feel that no punishment.
Yes, I want you. I need you. Robert, there is no disgrace in store for you, nor public dishonour. Mrs. Cheveley has handed to Lord Goring the document that was in her possession, and she has destroyed it.
Gertrude, are you sure?
Yes, Lord Goring has just told me.
Then I'm safe. Oh, is Arthur still here?
Yes, he's in the conservatory.
Oh, I'm so glad I made that speech in the house last night. So glad. Yeah, I made it feeling the public disgrace was in store for me, but it's not so.
No, public honour has been the result.
I think so. I fear so almost, for although I am safe from detection, although every proof against me is destroyed, I suppose, Gertrude, I suppose I should retire from public life.
Yes, Robert, you should do that. It is your duty to do that.
It is much to surrender.
No, it will be much to gain.
Arthur, I have to thank you for what you've done for me. I don't know how I can repay you.
My dear Robert, I shall tell you. At this present moment, under the second palm tree, I mean in the conservatory,
Lord Caversham.
that admirable father of mine makes a habit of turning up at precisely the wrong moment. It is very heartless of him, very heartless indeed.
Good morning, Lady Chiltern. Warmest congratulations, Chiltern, to you on your brilliant speech last night. I have just left the Prime Minister, and you are to have the vacant seat in the Cabinet.
Seat in the cabinet?
Yes, here is the Prime Minister's letter.
A seat in the cabinet?
Certainly, and you well deserve it too. You have got what we want so much in political life nowadays. High character, high moral tone, high principles, everything that you have not got, sir. And never will have.
I don't like principles, Father. I prefer prejudices.
I can't accept this offer, Lord Caversham. I've made up my mind to decline it.
Decline it, sir?
It is my intention to retire from public life at once.
Decline a seat in the Cabinet and retire from public life? Never heard such damned nonsense in the whole course of my existence. Lady Chiltern, I beg your pardon. Chiltern, I beg your pardon. Don't grin like that, sir. No. Lady Chiltern, you are a sensible woman. One of the most sensible women in London. You are the most sensible woman I know. Will you kindly prevent your husband from making such a... from talking such... Will you kindly do that, lady?
I think my husband is right in his determination. I approve of it.
You approve of it? Good heavens.
I admire him for it. I admire him immensely for it. I have never admired him so much before. He is finer than even I thought him. You will go and write your letter to the Prime Minister. Don't hesitate about it, Robert.
I suppose I had better write it at once. Such offers are not to be repeated. I will ask you to excuse me a moment, Lord Caversham.
I may come with you, Robert, may I not?
Yes, Gertrude.
What is the matter with the family? Something wrong here. Hey, idiocy! Hereditary, I suppose. Both of them, too. Wife as well as husband. Very sad. Very sad indeed. They are not an old family. I can't understand it.
It is not idiocy, Father, I can assure you.
But what is it then, sir?
Well, it is what is called nowadays a high moral tone, Father, that is all.
I hate these newfangled terms. Same things we used to call idiocy 50 years ago. Can't stay in this house any longer.
Oh, go in there, Father. The second palm tree on the left, the usual palm.
What, sir?
Oh, I beg your pardon, Father. I mean in the conservatory, Father, the conservatory. There's someone I want you to talk to.
Well, what about, sir?
About me, Father.
Not a subject on which much eloquence is possible.
No, Father, but the lady is like me. She doesn't care much for eloquence in others. She thinks it a little loud. Lady Chiltern, why do you play Mrs. Cheveley's cards?
I don't understand you.
Last night, Mrs. Cheveley made an attempt to ruin your husband, either to drive him from public office or to make him adopt a dishonourable position. From the latter, you've saved him. The former, you're now thrusting upon him. Why do you do him the harm that Mrs. Cheveley tried to do and failed?
You're going.
Lady Chiltern, allow me. Last night, you wrote me a letter in which you asked me for my help, and said that you trusted me. Well, now is the moment when you really need my help. Now is the time when you've got to trust me absolutely, to trust in my counsel and my judgment. You love Robert. Do you want to kill his love for you? What sort of existence will he have if you take from him the splendour of a great political career? A man's life has larger issues, wider scope, greater ambitions. A woman's life revolves in circles of emotion. It is upon lines of intellect that a man's life progresses. Don't make any mistake, Lady Chiltern.
But it is my husband himself who wishes to retire from public life. He feels it is his duty. It was he who first said so.
Rather than lose your love, Robert would do anything, wreck his whole career as he's on the brink of doing so now. He is making you a terrible sacrifice. Take my advice, Lady Chiltern. Do not accept a sacrifice so great. And besides, Robert has been punished enough.
We've both been punished enough. I set him up too high.
For that same reason, do not now set him down too low. Your husband's life is at this moment in your hands. Your husband's love is in your hands. Do not mar both for him.
Here is the draft of my letter, Gertrude. Shall I read it?
Let me see. A man's life has larger issues, greater scope, wider ambitions. A woman's life revolves on circles of emotion. It is upon lines of intellect that a man's progresses. I have learned this, and much else with it, from Lord Goring. I will not spoil your life for you, nor see you spoil it to me as a useless sacrifice. You will forget, men easily forget, and I forgive. That is how women help the world. I see that now.
My wife. Oh. Arthur, it seems I'm always to be in your debt.
My dear Robert, it is to Lady Chiltern that you are in debt.
I owe you much. And now, tell me what it was you were going to ask me when Lord Caversham came in just now.
Well, Robert, you are your sister's guardian, and I want your consent to my marriage with her, that's all.
Oh, I'm so glad, so glad.
My sister to be your wife?
Yes.
I'm very sorry, but the thing is quite out of the question. I have to think of Mabel's future happiness, and I don't think her happiness would be safe in your hands. And I cannot have her sacrificed.
Sacrificed?
Yes, utterly sacrificed. Loveless marriages are horrible. There is one thing worse than a loveless marriage. A marriage in which there is love, but on one side only. Faith, but on one side only. Devotion, but on one side only. and in which of the two hearts one is sure to be broken.
But I love Mabel. No other woman has any place in my life.
Robert, if they love each other, why should they not be married?
Cannot give Mabel the love she deserves.
What reason do you have for saying that? Do you really require me to tell you? Certainly I do.
As you choose. When I called on you yesterday evening, I found Mrs. Cheevely concealed in your rooms. It was between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. I do not wish to say any more. Your relations with Mrs. Cheevely are, as I said to you last night, nothing whatsoever to do with me.
I have nothing more to say.
Robert, it was not Mrs. Cheevely whom Lord Goring expected last night.
Not Mrs. Cheevely. Who was it?
Lady Chiltern.
It was your own wife. Robert, yesterday Lord Goring said to me that if ever I was in trouble, I could come to him, as he was our oldest and best friend. Later on, after that terrible scene in this room, I wrote to him saying that I trusted him, I had need of him, and I was coming to him for help and advice. I did not go to Lord Goring's after all. I felt that it is from our own selves that help may come. Pride made me think that. Mrs. Cheevely went. She stole my letter and sent it anonymously to you this morning that you might think. Oh, Robert, I cannot tell you what she wished you to think.
What? Had I fallen so low in your eyes that you thought that even for a moment I doubt your goodness? Gertrude, I know no sin can ever touch you. Arthur, you can go to Mabel and you have my best wishes. Stop a moment. Yeah, there's no name on the top of this letter. The brilliant Mrs. Cheevely doesn't seem to have noticed that. There ought to be a name.
I will write yours, Robert, for it is you that I need and trust, you and none else.
Well, really, Lady Chiltern, I do think I should have back my own letter.
No, you should have Mabel.
I hope she hasn't forgotten. It's nearly 20 minutes since I saw her.
Lord Goring, I think your father's conversation much more improving than yours. I am only going to speak to Lord Caversham in future, and always under the usual palm tree.
Darling.
What does this mean, sir? You don't mean to tell me that this charming, clever young lady has been so foolish as to accept you?
Certainly I do, Father. And Chiltern has been wise enough to accept a seat in cabinet.
I am very glad to hear that, Chiltern. I congratulate you, sir. If the country doesn't go to the dogs or the radicals, we shall have you Prime Minister someday.
Luncheon is on the table, my lady.
You'll stop to luncheon, won't you, Lord Caversham?
Oh, with pleasure. And I'll drive you down to Downing Street afterwards, Chiltern. You have a great future before you. A great future. Wish I could say the same for you, sir. Your career will have to be entirely domestic.
Thank you, Father. I prefer it domestic.
And if you don't make this young lady an ideal husband, I'll cut you off with a shilling.
An ideal husband? I don't think I should like that. That sounds like something in the next world.
Well, what do you want him to be then, my dear?
He can be what he chooses. All I want is to be a real wife to him.
Upon my word, there is a great deal of common sense in that, Lady Chiltern.
Aren't you coming in, Robert?
Gertrude, is it love you feel for me? Or is it pity, merely?
It is love, Robert. For us both, a new life is beginning.